Autumn for Black Tree, written and read by Oliver Tonic. This is a completed novella, read as a series. Enjoy the story from here on, or start from the beginning with the first episode. And now, back to the tale. Episode 10. Helming the Flame. The next morning, Barley sat leaning against one of the tip-top trees. They were a bit outside of the main village, and he sat in an arcade with them on either side, creating a pleasant canopy above him. He'd been waiting for about an hour when he spotted Paxiss coming to meet him. When she saw him, her eyes welled up, and she ran to him. He caught her in his arms, and she buried her wet face in his chest. He held her tight. "I heard the messengers talking about the attack this morning," he said softly. He sat holding her for a while as the wind blew through the trees. "I just can't do this anymore," she said. "I can't." Barley released her and wiped the tears from her eyes. "How long has this been going on?" Paxiss sniffed and laughed a bit. "I'm sorry. I'm always crying with you." Barley shook his head. "I would be too. I'm the crying man, remember?" She smiled with her eyes still gleaming. "I've been burning crops for years now. It started out with my own farm. When my mom gave it to me, I actually didn't mind growing food crops. I actually kind of liked it. But I refused to start tending the Pelodius. My siblings that still lived here and still had a farm jeered at me for it. My oldest sister once even came from her own land she was already ruling over to try and force me at my mother's request. She grabbed my arm and threw me into the dirt of the plot of land that was set aside for it. I was so angry. My mother convinced them all of what a terrible person I was. But didn't they also hate cultivating them? I thought you said they all fought it at first," he said. Paxiss shrugged. "I know. I have no idea. My mother's methods make everyone react the same way, and yet somehow, when it's the next sibling's turn, they turn on them like they didn't hate it too." Paxiss took out her berry bag. She looked up at the tree and spotted a strong branch. She reached into her pack and pulled out a rope with a hook. She swung it around and threw it up to the branch, and it caught. The hook wrapped around the branch and hooked around the rope, and Paxiss gave it a tug. "Wow," said Barley. "That's innovative." Paxiss smiled at him and began to climb up the rope. She shimmied her way up to the top and sat on the branch when she got there. She then stood up and began to climb up to the top. Barley could see her well from where he was, and she didn't have to speak too loud for him to hear. She began picking the berries at the very ends of the branches and at the top of the tree. I don't know when it happened the first time, but I think my mother was there herself. She was trying to force me to plant when I got so angry that I lit up. I tore through my own small crop of wheat and rye and tomatoes and burned it all up. My mother was furious. I didn't have a farm to care for anymore, so later she took me to another farm and I burned that one up as well. I burned up farm after farm. She got fed up and she treated me like an outcast. I was a failed treaty and a failed farmer, so in her mind, I was a failed heir. She turned my family on me as well as the people. She would come and tell me the kind of daughter I was to her, and I would light up all the time. I would go on rampages, burning everyone's crops. Finally, she cut her losses and made me a servant, so I could at least contribute to her somehow. But she never wants me to forget what a failure I've been to her. She has King Farron and his men regularly come to me, usually late at night. They remind me of what I am. It's been that way ever since." Barley looked down from her and frowned. He thought for a moment. "Are you aware when you light up?" "Yeah," said Paxiss, plucking a berry she had just reached. "Mostly, anyway. I guess I'm as aware as I can be while being angry. You know that feeling of blindness you get when you get really, really mad?" Barley nodded. "Well, it's like that, but I just can't turn it off. Also, I'm covered in flames, so I can literally see red. It's bright and hot, and I feel like that all adds to it somehow." Barley wondered aloud. Something about this didn't seem right to him. In fact, it all felt very wrong. Paxiss slid down the rope fastened to the tree. her berry bag full enough that she could barely tie it off. "You have to learn how to stop lighting up," Barley said as her feet touched the ground. "What?" "I mean, it's part of you, but you can't let it control you," he said. Paxiss had a considered expression on her face. "But I'm trying to fight them. I don't know what else to do. I don't have any other defense." "Your power is a tool," he said, "and you can either make it work for them or for you." Paxiss turned the thought over in her mind. "You lose control when you turn. Your parents know that, so they use that to their advantage. You can't let them do that to you anymore." Barley held out his hand. The bark from the back of his hands grew forward and coated his fingers. It grew until the tips of his outstretched fingers were points. Then the bark from his forearm grew a branch that was razor sharp and came to a point that rivaled any blade. It hardened and was so smooth it almost reflected. Pax's eyes were bulging with shock. "I knew I could either sit and let this thing I was born with take me over, or I could put it to good use. I chose to see if I could help someone with it." The wood gradually started to look dead, and Barley struck his forearm and hand against a tree. The now brittle weapon broke into pieces, leaving his arm back to normal. "You already saw what it looks like when I lose control," he said. "And when I let this stuff get away from me, I become someone else. I was trapped." He looked into her eyes. "And so are you." Paxiss chewed her bottom lip. "We are going to get to the bottom of this," he said. "But to do that, we need to take that control back. I'll help you." Barley gave her a gentle hug. Paxiss loved his smell. It reminded her of pine, and somehow oranges. He put his arms on her shoulders. "I know you need to get back," he said, "but I want you to meet me every morning at sundown. We will work on this. I'll teach you how to use this so you have the advantage. Watch your parents closely. See if you can gather any clues on the inside. I'll keep searching out here. Together, we are going to dig this town up." She smiled at him and gave him a kiss on the cheek. He gazed into her eyes and smiled back. They were green and hazel like a coral reef. She left, berries in hand. She went some distance and turned around and saw him watching her. She put her fist up. "Control!" she called out. "Control!" he said back, reflecting the gesture. So that was how it went for the next little while. Every day, Paxiss would spend the day serving her family while Barley continued his search. And every evening, Barley would meet her by the tip-top trees and they would train. Barley taught Paxiss first how to do breathing exercises if she got riled up, and how to escape to peaceful, happy thoughts when she grew anxious. Then they moved on to being able to alternate between her two forms. At first, Paxiss used raw anger, but gradually, she learned how to channel it into righteous indignation. She learned that it wasn't anger that was wrong, but what you did with it. This gave her surprising clarity when she was in her Firecat state. Paxiss revealed to Barley that she had indiscriminately burned everything during her episodes in the past. But over time, she had realized she was contributing to starving the people like they accused her of. Her parents would never let her forget that. She didn't want to hurt them, so she chose to try and burn only the Pelodius shrooms. This, as an allegory, helped her think of her anger the same way. She had to learn how to choose what she was angry with in her mind, and not to burn the good with the bad. This extended to understanding someone like King Farron. He was clearly in the wrong, and was the source of a lot of injustice for her. But ultimately she knew that he was not the true source of her torment. As she served the king and queen, she could see a bit more of the victim that he was. Kaporia often badgered him day after day about how much the people were contributing for taxation and how much they had to add new wings to the palace. Their home had been in a constant state of renovation for years. Whatever new addition there was never enough for the queen, and it was always up to King Farron to make sure whatever new idea she had for her home or new object of her desire was taken care of immediately. It was during one of these heated conversations between the two that Paxiss took a special note of something that she hadn't before. Kaporia had been yelling at Farron about the drapes over the windows in the new wing. Paxiss had been in the room dusting. Little bumps had popped up under Farron's shirt almost immediately after the argument. He huffed and left in frustration. Paxiss had seen this before, but this time decided to follow him. She saw the bumps on him grow larger on his shoulders and back as he stomped down the stairs to the lower level. He reached a large, black, and heavy door that she'd seen him go inside many times before. He swiftly disappeared behind it and locked it behind him. Paxiss returned to her work, and a few hours later, she saw Farron wandering the halls again, speaking to his men. The bumps were gone, and he seemed in a better mood. Paxiss made her way unseen to the black door and very gently tried the knob. She knew it wouldn't budge. She looked down and saw the keyhole underneath it. She had an idea. That evening, Paxiss met Barley by the tip-top trees and told him what she'd found. "The king sprouts mushrooms from his body?" said Barley. "Yeah, he always has." "So that was why he dropped one the night he came to visit me. Why in the world didn't you tell me this before? Is this like a normal thing in your realm?" "No, not exactly. I'm sorry, it must have just slipped my mind. It's always been that way with him. When he gets flustered or anxious, he grows mushrooms on his body." Barley thought this was a strange thing for her to have never considered or brought up. "And again, you have no idea why this happens?" "No idea. It's just how it is," she said. "This place is nuts." Barley put his palm to his forehead and thought for a moment. "So your mother had a history of growing the mushrooms long before you were born, and she always needed a king by her side. Did your real father grow mushrooms too?" "I don't think so. I'm pretty sure he would have burned them off if he did." Barley was stroking his chin. Paxiss knew he was really trying to work out his thoughts now. "So your father... Wait a minute. Did you know they were pelodious shrooms growing on him?" "No, I mean, they're usually pretty small and under his clothes. I could never get a good look before he would go down to his chamber." "This is strange." He was now pinching his chin. Pax's eyebrows went up as she remembered something. "Oh, I almost forgot." She reached into her bag and pulled out a new set of clothes. She told him about how she had noticed the blacksmith in the market wearing a suit that resembled the same material that the soldiers wore to get her out of her cage. She had noticed, when she attacked them, that they never lit on fire, so she wondered if it would also work on her. She asked the blacksmith if he could direct her to where she could get one for herself, and he sent her to the tailor who made his. They were dark gray and in two pieces. One piece wrapped around her whole chest and had no sleeves so that her arms could fit no matter what size and shape they were. The bottoms were shorts with wide legs for the same reason. She also had a hole above her bottom where her tail would be. I had to cut that part out myself. As odd a design as it was, I couldn't explain that little detail to the tailor for obvious reasons. I'm pretty sure I estimated the size and position of it right. Barley's face beamed. "You are something else, Paxiss. Look at you, taking control." Paxiss grinned ear to ear. She couldn't wait to try them in action. Hey guys, it's Oliver. Thank you so much for coming to my little corner of the internet to give me a listen. Give me a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you want to hear more of this and any of my other stories. This entire novel is free, along with all my stories on this channel. But if you'd like to support me, I have a Patreon now. Your donations go a long way in helping me perform, write, and produce. I'll have weekly episodes up until all 18 parts of the story are fully released. So stay tuned.